Hello, Taps. Great to
Hey Lloyd.
chat with you after a few years now.
Mm,
Wonderful to hear your story, and just look forward to hearing more about what you've been doing in the workplace and leading church and planting a new church. So maybe just to kick us off, just tell us a little bit about who you are. Maybe your recent experience, what you're doing at the moment. Just help us get a feel for what you're up to.
sure. Thanks, Lloyd. Yeah, my name is Tapiwa Chizana is my full name. I'm a partner at Deloitte. I'm the managing partner of the Deloitte Bulawayo office in Bulawayo. I also have a role within Deloitte Zim, where I'm responsible for risk for Deloitte Zim, Zambia, and Malawi. Yeah, I have been a partner for a number of years. Um, I'm also the leader of a church in Bulawayo called Hope City Church. We currently have two congregations and working on a third one. As you can see, I've got lots of spare time on my hands. But we know we've got great teams of people or leaders and pastors who are involved in the day to day of the church, which is great. Um, and Yeah, so that's pretty much kind of what I'm doing now. How I got there, should I get into that? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe just before you do that, what about family?
Mm.
Just tell us a little about you. Obviously, a dad as well, family,
Yes. Oh,
family man.
yeah.
Yeah, don't forget
Those
that.
those people. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I'm married, lovely wife named Flora. She's fantastic. She's into uh, uh, construction project management and interior decor and that kind of thing. I've got three kids, Maita, who's 13, Rutendo, who's 10, and Tinae, who's 8. So two girls at the top, and then the last one's a boy. And they're great. They're good fun and a real blessing to me. So that's
awesome.
my immediate family. Yeah.
No, great. No, thanks for that. Yeah, so just tell us a little bit about your journey into becoming a partner. Maybe just go back, rewind 20 years when I used to work with you back in Harare.
Mm, mm,
How the
mm.
journey started, how you felt, maybe a calling to accountancy, auditing, and how the years, it's very unusual for someone to stay in the same company for so long.
Mm,
So just tell us a little bit how you stayed the course, how things moved for you, how you ended up in Bulawayo, maybe. Um,
mm.
yeah.
Yeah, so basically, I joined Deloitte in 1998, straight from school. Deloitte had an amazing program at the time where they could take you straight from high school, and you could be working and studying at the same time. So, and they would pay for your university. So I worked for them. They paid for my university. I got my undergrad, got my postgrad, qualified as a chartered accountant, working at Deloitte. I must confess, I was inspired by my sister, who is also a chartered accountant, and saw her join Ernst& Young. I thought, hey, that's quite a fun profession. And It was God's sovereign leading, really, because I don't think I ever kind of wanted to be an accountant per se. I think I quite like the idea of working, earning a bit of money, and that kind of thing. So as I got into it, I realized that I had the aptitude for it, and then basically rose through the ranks. And Zim was burning on fire, hyperinflation in the early 2000s, and there was massive brain drain. When we joined, there were 51 people in our class, in a sense, in 1998. And then about 5 years later, I was the only one left. That's the impact of the brain drain in the country. Um, and um, I had a few prophetic words that encouraged me to stick it out and stay in Zim. One of them was given by an Indian evangelist called Ram Babu, who said to me, he gave me a word from about Isaac, who sowed in the land of famine and reaped 100-fold. And he felt like God was calling me to sow in this land of famine, Zimbabwe, and that He would bless me in that context. So because of words like that and many others, I just really had a sense and a peace to stay in Zim. So I did do secondment in the US for 3 months, another secondment in Joburg for 3 months, but basically came back to Zim, and that's when the firm offered me to move to Bulawayo to take up a senior manager role there, with the view of then becoming a partner. So in January 2007, I became a partner at Deloitte. So I was very young at the time. I was only 27. Wow. It was quite a thing at that stage to make partner at such a young age. But I had a good mentor who mentored me through that role, even as a new partner. So I kind of, by God's grace, managed to get into it. So that's pretty much my road to partnership. Okay. And then from a church perspective, if I go back again to 98, running parallel, I joined a Real Life Church, and I was discipled by PJ Smythe and other leaders there, and was very involved in the church. Definitely felt a call from God to serve Him, to preach the gospel. Had an evangelistic kind of gifting bubbling up within me. And that I kind of realized when I was still in high school, probably when I was about 16, when I met some on fire Christian youth guys who got me fired up. So by the time I left school and joined Deloitte, joined River of Life, I was really going for God, and at the age of 22, which is about a few years after I joined Deloitte, I planted a church. It was kind of like a youth church, young adults church, in a jazz club in Harare.
I remember that.
Yeah. So River of Life Avenues. So that was quite fun. It was a Sunday night service in a jazz club, young adults. So lots of people saved and added, and it was like that moment I felt God affirming His call on my life, and so it was really exciting, and I think that was kind of when I first tasted blood, in a sense, in terms of church leadership. And I was working and leading the church at the same time. In fact, we planted the church 6 weeks before my chartered accountancy board exams. So it's a bit crazy, but thankfully I passed my exams, and then we continued to grow. The church then merged with what is now River of Life Eastleigh, and God took me to serve other churches within our family of churches for a few years before we then moved to Bulawayo. And in Bulawayo, I was an elder at a church called New Creation, led by Mbonisi Malaba and others. And then eventually planted a few churches. So probably was definitely involved in planting a church called Tembale Zizwe, which is Hope of the Nations, in a place called Trenance. Planted another one in a place called Mguza. Sent some people to plant one in a place called Mazwi, and then eventually planted church in town, which we now call Hope City Church, which is basically got 2 congregations, and we're working on a 3rd. So in summary, that's kind of the whirlwind from a church leadership perspective. Linking in with, and all that time I was working at Deloitte.
Oh, fantastic. That's a lot to fit into 20 odd years. Tell us a little bit about discipling and mentorship and the role of that played, because you mentioned that briefly in your journey in the workplace, but I'm sure that also significantly helped you church-wise. How did you sort of really find out how to do all of that and achieve so much by God's grace, and the role that mentors, people coming alongside you, and how you do that now, how you disciple others, mentor others in the workplace and in a church context.
Yeah, so I think mentorship was massive. So I definitely credit a lot to PJ Smythe, who mentored me in River of Life, and encouraged me to plant my first church in a sense. And I think that mentorship in those periods was very foundational. And of course, other peers, mentored me as we go. I also benefit from the leadership of Scott Marks, who leads Disciple Nations now, and others on his team. So that encouragement is very beneficial to me. And I think I think I was a bit late in discipling others myself. So I think as I've gotten older. Not that I'm very old, but as I've gotten older, I'm placing a lot more emphasis on investing in the next generation, investing in mentorship and that kind of thing. And I think part of the reason is, I kind of one day just stopped and looked back and realized that I'd been planting all these churches in a sense because of a very strong pioneering evangelistic gift. But I wasn't replicating myself as much as I would have liked. So, so I think I caught myself in my tracks, and I thought, there's something wrong with this model. If I'm the one who's going to plant the next church, if anything, why don't I invest in the next generation, and then we can plant more churches? So I think now my focus is more on discipleship. And how I do it, basically, I gather groups of people, mostly they are in the marketplace, and I equip them with both church leadership skills and marketplace leadership skills all at the same time, because I kind of wear both hats, so I understand both worlds, and I believe in both worlds. So that's kind of how I'm doing it.
Okay. And what does that mentorship look like? Let's just pick work, for example. What does it look like? Is it meeting regularly? How do you practically, how does it work for
you? You mean like my mentorship at work?
Yeah, your people at work. How do you raise up people that you want to become future partners or, senior employees and Lloyd practice?
So I guess the profession is extremely structured. So you'll find that there are KPCs at each level and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of support in terms of guiding someone from a growth perspective. But I think my philosophy is probably, I think I'm very inclusive in my leadership and mentoring approach. So I'll ask my subordinates what they think about a different client situation, how they think I should deal with a client, how they think I should respond to a client, and involve them in me solving problems. And then together we come up with the right solution. So I think in summary, it would be a kind of, I try and make it as incarnate as possible,
okay.
Working together along the way. Yeah.
That's good. Tell us about some tough times that you've been through. Zim couldn't have been easy, especially early 2000s, farm invasions, hyperinflation, all your friends leaving, colleagues from Deloitte leaving left, right, and center. How did you get through that? And even just more recent, just all the political stuff going on in Zim. And how did you navigate, being relevant to people around you, maybe speaking into politics? Because I know you were the president of ICAS for a while, but then at the same time, not overstepping and getting involved in politics, getting drawn by people. So how did you manage all that?
Yeah, with great difficulty. I think, as you said, Zim is brutal, and I think you sometimes because you live there, you don't notice it. But I think when people come and stay for a year or 2 years, and you see how they're impacted, then you realize, sheesh, we're in a hectic place. But I think economically things have been tough. I'm grateful that I've got a stable job, so God's provided for me and my family. And I'd like to believe that that prophetic word really is ringing true. I think that in terms of engaging power, those in authority, yeah, I think one of the things I learned, I guess, is that people in authority have different priorities to what business may have, and sometimes even what the church may have. And I think initially I was a bit naive, but I think it's just the reality of the fact that we're in the world but not of it. The different centers of power with different agendas, the strongholds, the principalities, and we fight against not flesh and blood, but the flesh and blood is real. So those are just, I guess, some realities that I picked up and witnessed.
Yeah. What about when things have maybe gone wrong? I don't know, maybe an audit assignment has just turned out to be more than you expected, or it hasn't worked out as planned. How have you sort of dealt with maybe disappointment, maybe disaster? I don't know. Just tell us, and whatever you can, without disclosing too much, just how you navigated that, how you came back and just maintained a sense of peace and integrity before God.
Yeah. So I guess the easy answer is prayer, but it is true. Spending time with God. My wife has been very, very supportive as well. And there's one or two mentors who I have who are not necessarily involved in my line of work or in our church, but who I intentionally reach out to and talk through issues and that kind of thing. So I found that particularly helpful as well. Yeah, just kind of get perspective from mature people and so forth. So I think that's kind of how I've dealt with it, and just really knowing that God is for me, and I think one of the things that God has taught us in Zim, I guess, is to be resilient and strong. So I think God has helped us be resilient. So so we're probably not as shaken by by what would shake most people because of what we've been through.
Yeah, for sure. You guys are pillars. I don't know how you make it. Yeah. It's one thing to go back to Zim on holiday and experience it, but it's another thing to be living, having to deal with it all. What have been one of the, some of the most joyful things for you being a marketplace Christian and also a church? What have been the things that have thrilled your heart? Just look back maybe the last 10 years. What's just been, something that's just brought you a smile as you fell asleep?
Yeah, I think two things. I think my wife's involved in project management and construction, and seeing that flourish and fly, I think is really great because she's passionate about providing housing to people who can't ordinarily afford it. So I think that's been really a highlight. The other highlight, I think, has been being president of our accounting institute here in Zimbabwe, ICAS. I think it was a real privilege to serve the accounting profession in that way and meet our members all over the world as well, and be instrumental in starting chapters all over the world. So that was a real privilege. I really enjoyed that, and through that I was able to, of course, share my faith, God's love, through that. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And what would you say to someone who's maybe setting off in their career, maybe early 20s, but also maybe starting a family, and also at the same time thinking, involvement in church? What would you say based on all that you've learned? Would you say don't do this or do that, or work in a team? I don't know. What is your couple of maybe 3 points that you'd say to them?
Yeah, I think so. So when I look back, I think one of the mistakes I made was just over the last 20 years, I think, was not identifying clearly the areas where I was supposed to run alone and the areas where I was supposed to run with my wife. So, so, and I think I mixed it up. So where I was supposed to run with my wife, I probably ran alone, and vice versa. So, so, so I think the impact of that was that she didn't feel as involved or as engaged in some of the things I was doing. So I think one of the things I would do differently, and I guess that would be advice, would be to make sure that for the things that you are meant to be running with your wife, you do run with her, even if it means it's going to be a bit slower than you would prefer. So yeah, so that would probably be lesson number one and advice number one. And then I think other thing would be that I was actually out praying this weekend, and I remember thinking to myself, you know what, I wonder, could I just be involved in marketplace ministry without any church ministry at all? And I couldn't even imagine that. I just thought, sheesh, I've tasted too much of church life and the goodness of God, the bride of Christ, the gathered church. To whatever extent I will be involved in the marketplace, I'll still have a role in the local church, and I think God gives grace, and I think my encouragement would be for people to increasingly seek to embrace both, and love both, and press into both, and to trust God for grace to be involved in both. And in various seasons, there may be greater involvement in one compared to the other, but really just to believe that God would give grace, because I feel like whatever I'll do, both will just be a part of it. I mean, this third church congregation we're looking to plant, I mean, I'm using both church leadership skills and market skills there. We're, looking to set up a youth empowerment center. We're partnering, hopefully, with a company that's going to be teaching coding and IT to youth and that kind of thing. So I'm using a lot of my marketplace skills, but there's a clear agenda to gather community for the glory of God and for a church to be established. So it just comes hand in hand, in summary.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute privilege just to hear words of wisdom and your experience over the last few years. Thanks a lot, Taps. That's amazing.